Okay. Andrew Crystal used to listen to me and Ion, and he used to say to me privately, "There's something odd going on there, Bob. It seems that Ion's competing with you." Now, Andrew understood a lot of what I said. You know, he's an advanced McLuhan scholar, and I taught him a lot of stuff. And I learned things from him. We had a great dialogue while he was doing his PhD. He lives in New Zealand. So he noticed this competitiveness. And I would say it, I don't know what he perceives, but I would agree that there is a competition. And this level, I've always maintained that the issues that Ion points out are important are not that important compared to McLuhan's issues. But McLuhan did not come up with the RNA drops and the marvelous and the cold fusion. So the inventions of Ion are fantastic, are awesome, and there's no competition there. They created knowledge that McLuhan didn't have. But it's interesting in bringing forth these technologies, we have to deal with the Android meme. We have to deal with the communication matrix. Many people say, how come many millions of people don't know about you, Bob? No, don't know about this Ion thing. It's so amazing. For those that engage and realize how impressive it is, why don't more and more people want to be part of it? And I think my explanation, using McLuhan and then my extra five body knowledge, explains why we're not known. It doesn't matter how fantastic what you're doing is. The strange world of the Android meme is so beyond human understanding that it can erase you. It can you can't break through what it is focusing on. And so McLuhan. So I have this ongoing argument with Ion that Ion does not address the issues I'm talking about, unless he is addressing it, and I don't understand his answer. But Ion's verbal explanation of things, get happy or get out, all kinds of other explanations, the significance of the pyramids and how they're not completed. I always think about McLuhan's angles on these points as something Ion is not dealing with. So I'm always maintaining my McLuhan position and my five-body position all the time with Ion. And I'm not satisfied with Ion's responses when he does engage those problems, those issues of communication. Other times I'm half satisfied because he does seem to have the approach, what one should do. Like Ion says, do not pay too much attention to the outer kingdom, to the Android meme news events. It's not your world. It's nothing to do with you. And that's probably a wise suggestion today. But I would bring in McLuhan to explain why it is a wise suggestion. I would use McLuhan to explain it. I don't think Ion explains why one should ignore the news today adequately. So it's an argument over choice of words, over explaining sociological or metaphysical issues. When Ion is speaking words to us, and you think of T.S. Eliot from his poem Sweeney Agonistes, where a character says, "I got to use words when I talk to you." So Ion's got to use words to be creative and engage with us. And I would say McLuhan points out words are pretty inadequate. The way verbal words are inadequate to describe the Android meme. If you say the correct words, as McLuhan presented, the correct vocabulary, you might be accurate in your description of the Android meme and its issues. But there's no contest with Ion on what Ion's creating. What we've done with the cold play, we call it cold play, not cold fusion. Ion is not impressed with the cold fusion technology. Our cold fusion technology is so much better on so many levels and so different that we call it cold play. So when you look at what Ion has helped create and the RNA drops and other things we do, that's definitely a new kind of creativity that leaves McLuhan in the dust. McLuhan is not on that level. Nobody is. No scientist, anybody. So you have to talk about McLuhan and you have to talk about ion on several levels. You see what I'm saying?
Yes, the thing is nobody can be at that level because they're not aware, as you say, of the new technologies. And as McLuhan said, to live in the present, you have to know what the new technologies are, and they're usually invisible. And what the most of the people see is the old environment. They're still in the
Right.
electric environment.
Now this is it. Okay, this is a good point. Um, the cold play is not an environment yet. It's only when populations, many millions of people are using the cold play that it's an environment. And no, and the effects of it will still be odd and upsetting to people, and they may not see the effects of the cold play even though they're using it. Just as McLuhan used to say, people don't understand the effects of television even though they're using television on a mass scale. Now, the other level, though, is that iron says that the I cell, which is the key ingredient in the cold play, in the RNA drops, is affecting the world. So even though people are not buying there's not millions of people buying the RNA drops, this I cell is so powerful, it is acting on humanity as if millions of people were using it. So that's a bit different about the nature of the I cell. McLuhan's point doesn't apply there. Or people are using the I cell even though they don't know. No, they're getting the effects of the I cell and kind of using it because those people that use the RNA drops and exhale, ion says, are changing the environment. So in the case of the RNA drops, the I cell is an environment and people are being engaged in it and are reacting to it. And but we can't prove that. There's no way there's no evidence of people's lives or that global warming has stopped. I think Ion said we've altered global warming. And even that statement that I'm claiming Ion made, if I interrogate Ion tomorrow, he might describe it a bit differently than he did before. Ion's always adding to, changing, adjusting what is going on as we learn more and are capable to get the newer version of what's going on from him. So it's a complicated process communicating with ion just about the effects of the I cell. But I know that ionets, or people that engage ion, because those are the people I talk to more than most, they say the world has changed the last few years in their natural perception of things. Now, maybe the world's changed because they're taking the drops, but they often say, no, I'm looking at the world, I'm looking at my employees or my colleagues who don't take the drops, though they might be subjected to my exhalation in the office, and I know people have changed. The environment has changed. There's just something different going on. And so I think that they're noticing something, and we take credit for that change. But they'd be hard-pressed to prove it or to spell it out, so that's why it's hard to understand payday, because we're talking to people who have an inkling of what's going on because they're taking the drops and they've seen ion perform and they've seen what's happened to Carol and I. They have a way of noticing it. They're beginning to see the environment. But any outsider who has no clue of what we're doing, they wouldn't understand or see what I'm saying. So that's the complexity of it. That's the simplicity of it even. The I cell's here, it's activating as an environment, having effects, and majority of humanity don't see it.
Yes, and I'm also very surprised that people say that you or the drops are evil. and I say, how can somebody that shares what he knows, like you and Caroline, be evil? Or present new technologies?
Well, I can understand it. Many people think Hillary Clinton's evil. Many people think the Prime Minister of Canada, Stephen Harper, is evil. People have opinions. They think Taylor Swift is evil. The media images rub up against so many different kinds of people, so many different forms of perception, that people are naturally going to be disgusted by this and that. And it's not to be taken seriously. Like, I think it's Bob Dylan said that he never reads any reviews of what he does. I've heard several artists say that. They do not care what is said about them. And that's probably a wise policy. And so they put out their works, their arts. Are they concerned about how they're trying to communicate something? They can't find out what they're communicating because they can't. Well, at least they're not going to find out from the critics. Maybe they just enjoy the fact the audience is cheering and holding up the lighters and, hey, that was a great concert and all this stuff. They just go by the instinctive, but there's no translation into concepts beyond that, and they don't care what critics and that say about it. So that's part of the hyper isolation of our world. If you're a great communicator, I'm sure Obama, he has to pick and choose what he's going to react to. That's why he has all these advisors. At least that's how they show it in these TV shows. All these advisors tell him, okay, this issue you're going to have to respond to. The other issue you don't have to. So he largely is ignoring what's being said for him, and he'd be operating in a vacuum as president. I mean, he's just communicating, and he can't judge the effects until someone tells him, no, you caused a problem there, you're going to have to do this. And his polls have been down for a long time, or at least somebody says their polls are down. He has to say, I'm not communicating effectively. My polls are way down. But maybe he doesn't have to care about that. See, it's very ambivalent how one communicates today, how one is getting across if you're in the public global theater stage.
Yes, as McLuhan said, since there is an electric environment, the audience is more involved, and
than you, the creator.
There is like a circuit, and everybody seems to have the right to say what they think and what is their opinion. The problem is one cannot engage in nonsense or in insults or in discussions that are not really interesting.
Well, you can. And you find most of the commentary on the internet reacting to whatever the topic is. There's a lot of sniping at each other. And it's what McLuhan would call it, participation. Everybody's reacting to the intention they perceive someone wrote something, and then they'll criticize that intention. So it does not have a conclusion. It's just an exchange. It's just people breathing together, talking together, and actually to be a little more rude to each other because they're not in the same room. So they can practice insulting. And that's you could say it's a game, a sport, but it's actually a pleasure for people of a certain mentality who don't care. They're not trying to make a point. They don't want to have to take responsibility for what they say. They just like being funny or being aggressive. So there's that pleasurable, perceptual typing and interacting going on. It's a unique acquired taste, and most people don't do it. They think it's a waste of time beyond they're arguing with somebody about something that has no consequence. But I wouldn't be moralistic and say that those people are wrong in their nonsense that they're typing. They're having fun doing it. It's a new kind. It's much like Finnegan's Wake, a book with no content, with just babble. but people can enjoy babbling. They like babbling. They like, I don't know if you call it communication. They like rubbing up and expressing themselves against other people expressing. So nobody knows where the real decisions are being made. Where is someplace real serious that is dealing with the issues in the world? It'd be very, very hard to find that. Now, I claim to be part of that group back in the Secret Council of 10 Days. And it's not that we controlled society, but we knew what was what. And we also knew that, well, you're just going to have to let this unfold. Back in 1990, when I gave up the Secret Council of 10 chairman position, and I disbanded the Secret Council, I said, we're just going to have to let this drift and see how extreme the damage will be. And then it looked pretty damaged. And
collateral damage.
What?
Collateral.
Yeah. there was a lot of collateral damage between 1990 and 2009. That's 19 years of collateral damage. And then iron showed up and provided an antidote. And you know, I was just talking with Chad and a bunch of people on the What Youth show. My essay, Silencing the Virtually Solar Theater. That's part 2 of my Up the Orphic Ante essay I wrote in 1995 or 1996. That's what I realized iron does. Iron silences the virtually solar theater. I mean, the solar theater is one thing, but within the Android meme, it's a virtually solar theater. It's not a global theater, it's a solar theater. And iron silences it. They provide an anti-environment to it with the iCell. So I actually just realized today, for the first time, how accurate that title was. And Chad was talking, and he said, wow, that's right. He had not realized it either. He'd thought of the title in old-fashioned ways, but not the fact that ion silenced the virtually solar theater. That was the solution, and it's still ongoing. And of course, most people, 99% of humanity, is going to say, "You fucking nuts, Bob! You didn't solve anything," you know, blah blah blah.
Yes, it was supposed to be ready in 1969.
Yeah. And we're talking about the living water. The living water hasn't come out yet. Oh, where's the living water, Bob? Come on. You said you had the living water. You're all egging us on to produce it. It'll be produced. And but they don't.
Yes. What would you say McLuhan will say about ion, about this environment?
I don't know. I think he'd be impressed with the technologies. He certainly would take it. He'd try it. He wanted to do the D-cell. That's an interesting point. Carolyn delivered him the D-cell, and he had his stroke on September 26, 1979, the first stroke that put him into aphasia, so he couldn't talk, read, or write for a year, a little more than a year, and then he died of a heart attack or something. Or some people say he was murdered. There's that school of thought that McLuhan was murdered. But anyways, when he had the stroke, his assistant, the husband of his secretary, Margaret Stewart, Jim Stewart, knew about the D-cell, actually was the person who told Carolyn that Marshall was interested in talking to her about the D-cell. And he found the D-cell in the hallway of McLuhan's home, sitting on a little table. It hadn't been opened yet. So he failed to use the D-cell the last week of his conscious life, or his full functioning life, and he never used it. So I always thought it was a metaphor that he didn't get to the promised land. He didn't get the D-cell. Now, D-cell was pretty good back then. It's not as strong and as powerful as the I-cell, but the D-cell was a close approximation of the I-cell. So McLuhan actually wanted to use the D-cell. He was open-minded enough to put this little rock in the water. Now, he did not do that. So maybe he decided, nah, this is a stupid little stone, I'm not going to do it. And he didn't do it in the 7 days he had left to do it. But then he had a stroke. He fucked with Bob. Instant karma. He didn't take my fucking advice. And he had a stroke. You know, maybe he should have done the D-cell. Okay, I wanted to add that I think it's awesome that the final image, it's a very obscure image, only I know the relevance of it, but to hear that the day after Marshall had a stroke, there was the D-cell sitting in the hallway on a little table, and Jim Stewart saw it. That to me is very symbolic of a lot of things. And only I know that. You know, I know that what Jim saw. And I know what Carolyn spoke to him a few days before he had a stroke. So there's lots of megalomaniac aspects I could throw at that when I'm in a playful mood. But it is symbolic that McLuhan, who Ion says has pretty good language for what the ionic experience is. It's not perfect, but he's maybe the best speaker about preparing people to understand ion, that he had the D-cell in his home. And then, of course, there's the poet Ian Arlett gave McLuhan his book of poetry called The Hamburger Bomb, the same time that Carolyn gave him the D-cell. So when I was looking at the University of Toronto's archives, personal library there, Marshall McLuhan's personal library, I asked to see. I saw in the list that the Hamburger Bomb was listed as one of Marshall's books, so I had it brought down out of the stacks and Xerox some aspects of the Hamburger Bomb, which I used to have, but I don't have it anymore. I lost it or something. Ian passed away on April 2012. And so I Xeroxed the Hamburger Bomb, and in my own personal mythology, it's as significant as the D-cell that was given to McLuhan. You know, the D-cell. Two things were given to him a week before his fateful Friday when he collapsed. So that's pretty interesting to me. That's a form of communication that was going on.